All right, hello everyone. It is, I was going to say 3:30 p.m. because that's where it is. That's what time it is where I am. But I guess it's 2 o'clock Eastern time now. So I will do some introductions and let other people trickle in. But I'm so excited to be giving you guys the first talk of KazimiCon. It feels completely surreal to be here. And also, this is literally the first Twitter space I have ever participated in. So no pressure. Um, but for those of you who don't know me, my name is Gill. My pronouns are they, them, and I am a queer neurodivergent astrologer living in St. John's, Newfoundland. And for those of you who don't know where that is, it is the most eastern part of North America. So I am like as far away from Disneyland as you can get. um, and if you didn't know, St. John's is the place where wired and wireless communications crossed over the Atlantic Ocean, which is just a fun fact I like to share with people. Um, but before I even begin, I just wanted to take a minute to appreciate what we're collectively creating over the next few days. You're attending Twitter's first astrology conference. Like, how cool is that? And I just wanted to give a giant shout out to all of the brilliant minds behind KazimiCon. This is going to be such an incredible weekend filled with astrology of all kinds. And I hope that you guys stick around to see the incredible talks that are happening this weekend. And yeah, I'm so pumped to be kicking things off. I'm the type of person who likes to do scary things first and get it over with. It is being Mars ruled, I think. And with that, I am a Libra sun, an Aries moon, and a Scorpio rising. And actually, tomorrow is my solar return. I have the Kazemi in my solar return chart, and I'm so excited. And I'm finishing an 11th house Mercury year and going into a 12th house Libra Venus year. So it feels very appropriate to be doing what I'm doing right now. Wow, all these reactions are so fun. I might be a Zoomer, but on Twitter, I feel like a boomer. um, and lastly, before I get started, I just wanted to give a giant thank you to the KazimiCon organizers, and also to Sam for that amazing speech. It was so wonderful and inspiring, as all of your speeches always are. And I wanted to say thank you to my fellow speakers because you guys inspire me endlessly. And also thank you to the Astro Elders. And I'm sure everyone in this room or space would agree with me that I sometimes don't even know if they know how big of an influence that they've been on us. Like, as a Pluto and Sag kid that is mainly self-taught, without the hard work of the folks that came before us, I wouldn't be here today. So without further ado, well, actually, one more thing. I want to thank all of you guys for being here. I'm so grateful to have your attention. And yeah, and hopefully I'll be able to hear some of your voices later on when we get further in. But without further ado, I welcome you to my talk, Zoomers and the Memefication of Pop Astrology. And one more thing I forgot to tell you all. I'm also the host of Astrologize Radio, which is a radio show and podcast all about astrology. And I had intended for this to be hosted on that account because this will be an episode of the podcast literally next week. But Mercury retrograde got me good. So here I am on my personal account. So there is no denying that the internet changed the relationship that we all have to astrology. Social media, digital technology, and the internet gave us all the chance to learn astrology in the most accessible way yet. Like, chart drawing software meant that we didn't have to do any more math if we didn't want to. Astrology blogs created a shared virtual space for astrologers to connect. YouTube videos became an easy way for people to learn and teach and grow an audience. But this digital shift also pushed pop astrology further into the mainstream. And although astrology had previously been commodified, the age of digital advertising has been a whole new ballgame. Astrologers now have to compete with the sensationalization of astrological concepts for the sake of clicks and commodification. And even though we all exist outside the digital world, let's face it, you're currently attending the opening talk of Twitter's first astrology conference. And so what we do here and what we see here shapes our perception of reality in a lot of different ways. And there's a lot of different sources that I've used in the research that I'm about to you, but one that I'm going to keep coming back to is this article from Wired called "The Internet Changed Astrology and Then Came the Memes" by Justice Namaste. And in this article, the author says, quote, "Just as the internet has altered current events, it has also altered the practice of astrology, turning something that used to require decades of study into something that's easily Googled," end quote. And so while this digital shift was happening, an entire generation of people were being raised. Zoomers, or Gen Z, or as I like to call us, Pluto and Sag kids, were the first to grow up with the world at our fingertips. We were the first to have a perception of self and to have our perception of self and the world, and sorry, our perceptions of self and the perceptions of the world shaped through these screens. Pluto transited through the sign of Sagittarius from 1995 to 2008. Don't come at me if you're born in 95 and have Pluto in Scorpio. These are general dates. But in this time, digital technologies became deeply, deeply embedded into day-to-day life. And similarly, Uranus transited through Aquarius from 1995 to 2003. Again, rough estimates. And aside from a small pocket of folks born in the spring of 95, anyone with Pluto in Sagittarius either has Uranus in Aquarius or Uranus in Pisces. And folks with Pluto in Sag and Uranus in Aquarius were the first to grow up fully online. We were raised by memes, YouTube videos, viral trends, and influencer culture. And some of us had cell phones before puberty and Facebook accounts before the age 10. We were the first generation to have our entire selfhood shaped and perceived through the lens of the internet. And so, all of this to say, I started asking the question, what does it mean for an entire Pluto generation to grow up online? And what does it mean for a whole generation to grow up with access to these revolutionary astrology technologies at their fingertips? And what does this do to the perception of astrology within popular culture and the future of astrology in general? Now, I want to talk a little bit about how this talk came to be. And then I want to kind of give you guys a rundown of kind of the order of operations that we're going to go through, because I have ADHD and I want to make sure I'm being clear. And also, if I ever get distracted, it's because I still really don't understand how to use Twitter Spaces. So somebody alert me if there's something I should be paying attention to. But so the rundown of what this talk is going to be, we're going to do a quick overview of what pop astrology is generally. Then I'm going to give you guys a fun history of memes. And then we're going to talk about Gen Z and how we all fit into this, this idea of the memefication of astrology. And hopefully, if there's time at the end, I would love to hear your thoughts on all of this. And most importantly, as you guys are all listening, I would love it if you guys could share your favorite memes about astrology, your least favorite memes about astrology, even your favorite memes in general. I had pulled a bunch of memes to show you guys as an examples, but I figured that it would be much more fun to make that a little bit more of an interactive component rather than me just like shoving memes down your throat, you know? So, the way that I got to like doing this talk was that for the past year, I've been working on these generational tables that visualize the subgenerations of each Pluto placement. And I don't know if this should be in the thread somewhere, if we could put it up on the Jumbotron. I made a giant document called The Subgenerations of Uranus and Aquarius, investigating the polarization and radicalization of a highly reactive and revolutionary generation. And this came about because I am forever frustrated with people my own age, and I'm sure other people here could relate to that too. And I was so like reactive to some news that I had read about somebody that was my age that I was like, how is it that somebody that's born 4 months before me has such a drastically different worldview? And obviously there's a bunch of different factors, but my first thought was astrology. So during the Mercury Cazimi in Gemini back in May, I sat down and made this ginormous document, and I divided the Uranus and Aquarius generation into 22 subgenerations. And I should have pictures of those in the thread somewhere. Let me try to find them for you.
They're currently shared to the
Oh, perfect.
Jumbotron.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, so as you can see in these slides, I just kind of like wanted to visualize how much the outer planets changed, and I included Saturn and Jupiter because Pluto being ruled by Jupiter, and Pluto and Sag being ruled by Jupiter, and Uranus Aquarius being ruled by Saturn. And so my intention was to focus on Uranus and Aquarius specifically for this talk, but if I'm being 110% honest with you all, I forgot that I had said I was going to do that. So when I started writing, I started focusing more generally on Pluto and Sag. And I worked on these tables for a very long time, and I plan to give you a PDF later on if you're interested. And I feel like that's going to be an interesting case study later down the road. Anyway, so you might be wondering, okay, so where do the memes come in? You know, you came here for the memes, you came here for the jokes. The answer is now, as I take a dramatic sip of my tea that you can't see. In the age of the internet, memes have become a really popular rhetorical device. According to the New York Times, a meme can be defined as a concept, belief, or practice conceived as a unit of cultural information that may be passed on from person to person. Memes are easily reproduced, widely shared, and are markers of cultural interest. And the popularity of astrology memes in general has led to a massive cultural interest in astrology. And as more people come of age in the digital world, memes have emerged as a new way of interacting with astrology, similar to how the sun sign horoscopes did in newspapers, reducing things down to a simple phrase or photo that could be easily understood and digested by a large group of people. Now, I'm sure I don't need to explain to a whole room of astrologers just how exhausting it can be to validate your passion for astrology to folks who think it's all about memes and horoscopes and bad stereotypes. But at the same time, the visibility of astrology means that more people can come and learn and grow and understand. So I guess what I'm really trying to talk about in my short period of time is, what do we do with these contrasting effects? We have this really powerful tool that everybody loves. Like, who doesn't like memes? you know but then at the same time, with everybody having a platform and a voice, credibility and what's real and what's not can kind of get washed away at sea, so to speak. And from the same Wired article that I quoted earlier, the author said, quote, "The abundance of information online about the celestial movements and a seemingly infinite number of people writing horoscopes has transformed the practice of a devout subculture to a subject so popular that there are hundreds, maybe thousands, of social media accounts dedicated solely to astrology," end quote. And that's true. The reality is that the memes have the power to shift the understanding of the language of astrology within the internet, within digital culture. And in the case of pop astrology, these memes can shift how the masses perceive astrology, for better or for worse. And I'm sure we don't have to reach very far to see how, some memes have really led to so many people getting really into astrology and using it for better understanding themselves and the world around them. And then you also see astrology being weaponized. We all roll our eyes during Mercury retrograde because every main media news outlet is like, Mercury's retrograde, the world's gonna end. And they're doing it all for clicks. And we roll our eyes. You can't see it, but I'm rolling my eyes. But before we dive deeper into memes, I think that we should first look at pop astrology more generally. So if I could get the slide about the brief timeline of pop astrology up on the Jumbotron, perfect. I also forgot that Twitter does squares now and not the big posts like it used to, but in my brain, this was going to look a lot better on the Jumbotron. But this little slide that I made is just kind of like a quick overview of the different, so to speak, waves of pop astrology. And first, it starts in the 1930s with newspaper horoscopes. And I'm sure most of you know this, but Richard Naylor, he didn't invent the newspaper horoscope, but he is the dude that made it popular. And, with the media, if you're the person that made it popular, you're somehow the inventor of it. But this type of astrology emerged as a simplified version that could be communicated to the masses in bite-sized form. It reduced the complexity of the natal chart down to 12 neat categories, And what's your sign became shorthand for what sign is your sun in. But before the horoscope, almanacs were the greatest source of astrological information for people. They had the moon cycles, what sign the moon was in, when eclipse season was, when the seasons change. And this was really valuable information to people that needed to know all sorts of things. And so as the horoscope columns in the newspapers and then magazines led to a massive cultural interest in zodiac signs and, astrology in general, consumer culture quickly clutched onto this popularity, which led to commodification. And so we see this a lot in the 1970s, where we have the 17 magazine putting all the signs on their front cover. We see all sorts of brands selling zodiacs themed jewelry and, perfumes and drinks and all sorts of things. And also Linda Goodman's Sun Signs is published, which is, arguably one of like the biggest books that made astrology like part of the zeitgeist of pop culture. And then as time progressed, we get to what we have now, which is like digital astrology. We have podcasts and we have memes and we have apps. And now there's just so much out there that pop astrology has just kind of like flourished into this just big subgenre of astrology. And the internet has made astrology content insatiable to people, and the masses are hungry for the content. But the word consumption and content in my brain is like kind of contradictory to astrology, because it just, not contradictory, but consumption culture is really dangerous because it's always asking for more and more and more. And we're people, we only have the capacity to create as much as we can. And burnout is very, very real. And for some reason, a lot of people who are consuming pop astrology think that we are not humans and that we are just living, breathing, and eating memes about astrology. So this begs the question, what do memes and astrology have in common? Well, if you were to give two astrologers from different fields of study the exact same birth information, chances are that you would get two drastically different delineations. And in the same breath, if you were to give two different people the exact same image and ask them to create a meme, chances are you would get two drastically different interpretations. And the symbols that we use to interpret the vast language of astrology is really similar to memes. They're both symbolic systems of communication that get replicated and interpretive as they get passed on from person to person. Two people with wildly different lived experiences won't always find the same thing funny. Same as two astrologers with wildly different experiences won't always have the same delineations when reading a birth chart. And so now let's talk a little bit about a brief history of memes. And I think I have another slide up there for you all to see. And don't judge my memes that I picked out. I kind of had a brain fart when I was like, what memes existed? And then I got overwhelmed with the choices. So I just picked the first ones I saw. But according to the New York Times, quote, humans have used memes to communicate for as long as they have used any symbolic system, end quote. And I thought that was really interesting because I think that a lot of the time we think that memes exist solely on the internet, but it's really not the case. Although the memes that we use today is predominantly online, the word meme really just means a collection of cultural ideas passed from person to person that's usually transmitted through different forms of media. The word meme itself was coined in 1976 by Richard Dawkins, who is a biologist and an all-around not a great dude. I'm not a fan of this man whatsoever, but if you read anything about memes, his name is always in there. So I thought it was worth letting you all know. We'll talk about him more in a second, but the Coles Notes version is that he is a sexist astrology skeptic, which is fascinating to me. The word meme has two different origins. The first being from the French word meme, which means same. And the second one being from the Greek word, and don't judge me for the pronunciation, I don't know how to speak Greek, mimumai, M-I-M-O-U-M-A-I, to imitate. Yeah, sorry in advance for how I just butchered that spelling. I know how to speak French, but I don't know how to speak Greek. So memes take a bunch of different forms. I'm sure I don't need to illustrate what the different formats of memes are, but I'm sure if you guys were to just like think back to the early memes, like I have the ones from the 2000s, they had a very like distinct look to them. They were, the LOL cats and the advice dogs, and there was tons of different, tons of different variations of them, but they were very simple, a picture and text. And then in the 2010s, memes just exploded, right? Like we have the Rage comics, we have Pepe, we have Vine, we have all sorts of things. And then we have the memes that we see all the time today. My favorite one being right now is the DW one. And I can't believe I didn't add this, but the Little Miss and Mr. Memes are some of my favorite ones from 2022. But wait, hold on. I just completely lost my train of thought. I just wanted to say that memes are obviously super mercurial, and the replicability. I always do this. I put a word in my notes that I actually can't speak. If you listen to my podcast, I do this literally all the time. The replicability of memes really reminds me of Mercury's trickster energy. Yeah. And so now I unfortunately want to tell you about Richard Dawkins, because as much as I really don't like the dude, he is interesting. I forgot to get his chart up, but I do have his birth information for anybody that's interested. Dawkins was born March 26th, 1941 in Nairobi, Kenya. We don't have a time of birth, but he is a biologist, astrology skeptic, privileged white dude with a lot of opinions with Pluto and Leo. He also randomly has the exact same birthday as my grandma, which is weird to me. He has an Aries sun, a Pisces moon, and I don't know his rising sign, but he has Mars in Capricorn, Saturn in Taurus, Uranus in Taurus, and Jupiter in Taurus. So, party. I also have Mars in Capricorn and Saturn in Taurus, so that's interesting. But yeah, he was a hardcore scientist that believed astrology was getting more airtime than science. And he was so mad that astrology was getting more airtime than science that he took it upon himself to make a YouTube video called Astrology Debunked, which I think I have linked somewhere. I wouldn't watch it unless you're in the mood to get mad. I just thought I would like reference it in case people were curious. But in the video, Dawkins says that astrology is an irrational nonsense and a quote, primitive belief system made into an elaborate pseudoscience, which arrogantly makes humans the center of the universe. The movement of the planets are said to signify petty developments in our career or life, or love life, end quote. Yeah, so in this video, he consults with an astrologer to try to understand astrology beyond sun sign astrology, but he's so blocked by his obsession with proving astrology to be fake scientifically that he doesn't actually listen. And so the astrologer tries to explain how reductive sun sign horoscopes are, but Dawkins already has his mind made up because he has this research test that he wants to do, this experiment, so to speak. And he kept asking the astrologer, he was like, how could this possibly work? And the astrologer was just like, dude, I don't know. Oh, thank you for getting his chart. Slay. That was quick. Yeah, fascinating chart, especially with Uranus being in Taurus right now. So in this video, he then conducted an experiment where he told people that he was reading a horoscope for their sun sign, but he actually was reading a horoscope for a different sun sign. And basically, he just wanted to know if people would resonate with the false horoscope. And like, I'm sure this isn't a surprise. People obviously did resonate with the false horoscope. And he was like, this proves that astrology isn't real. But it's like, dude, your scientific quote unquote experiment like was what? Like, you took one part of astrology. Anyways. And when astrology memes reproduce stereotypes, people on the outside use it as evidence of Dawkins' argument that it's a discriminatory pseudoscience. And we obviously know that his argument is not sound and that he's only one person, but his arguments are echoed by countless other skeptics out there. And we are the ones bearing the brunt of the blame. We're bearing the heavy load. how many tweets have you seen in the last year where people are like, oh my God, astrology is such a red flag. Like, dump them because they're asking for your birth time. If you guys go to knowyourmeme.com and look at the astrology meme section, you're going to see that most of the memes are mocking astrology, not memes for astrologers. And I thought that was really interesting. And this is all to say that, so we have this format of memes, and we know that it's a very important part of pop astrology right now. And then at the same time, we also have this whole generation of people that grew up with the internet, that grew up, I was gonna say watching memes. I guess in like TikTok and Vine's case, you could say that you watch memes, but looking at memes, sharing memes, creating memes, and using it as a language of self-expression, of building community, of feeling like you're on the inside of things. And the Pluto and Sagittarius generation is like highly criticized for being distracted, polarized, over-dependent on social media, and like using it as a crutch for self-expression. Content creation is something that we are innately familiar with. We were the first to grow up with an About Me section on digital platforms. I think I posted my first video to YouTube when I was like 8, maybe 9. The video was actually, it was literally just like me recording myself on a photo booth video. I think I was lip syncing to something. It was very embarrassing and you can't find it anywhere. And I just dropped a bunch of things. But let's face it, I love us all, but Pluto and Sag sometimes thinks that we know everything, and we love a good soapbox, and we love to be high up on our soapboxes. And for people who grew up in the digital age, Gen Z, memes about our sun signs were the first glimpse into the language of astrology, beyond the sun sign horoscope at least. And of course, this is a super generalization, and people with different lived experiences will definitely disagree with me. But the popularity of astrology memes, like within like virtual spaces that Pluto and Sag people occupy, has led to like this this online discourse where like you can't avoid astrology. It's literally everywhere. Whether people are into it or not, people are always going to be consuming it. And it's like very much a topic of conversation. I feel like your quote unquote big three, or SMR, which is way better, is it like a class? Like when I worked at Starbucks, I remember everyone being like, can you look at my co-star and tell me about my placements? And I'm like, no, I can't, but have fun. Hold on, I lost my train of thought. Sorry, folks. Oh yeah. So with memes at the tip of our tongues, of course, the types of memes I consume are going to be drastically different from the memes that you guys consume, but we're nevertheless interpreting the same signs and applying our own lens of the world onto it. We're the first to grow up with influencer culture, we use memes as a coping mechanism. And even though they're not limited to a particular generation, the relationship that Pluto and Sag and Uranus and Aquarius folks have with memes is very innate. We were some of the last to play outside and the first to live online, which I think is really interesting. And on that same topic, I think sometimes we take like our digital, you could say digital privilege almost for granted. And I mean, this is, of course, like very much from the assumption that you would have access to the internet, which I'm well aware that not everybody does from a young age. But you know, we had access to free online chart mapping software. We didn't have to learn how to calculate charts by hand. We had YouTube videos and podcasts about astrology. Huge shout out to the Astrology podcast. Chris and Co has taught me so much. And I think it was 15 when the first episode came out. And astrology apps like CoStar and Time Passages and Sanctuary made astrology accessible to the masses and palatable to the masses. And also a shout out to the Chani app, but we're going to talk about that in a second. And we're fluent in social media: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Reddit, Tumblr. They're really easy places for us to consume all of this and to learn more about your chart. And so you have this whole generation of people who have access to all of this information, but they don't have the critical awareness to be able to like know where it's coming from, or what sources to believe, and what's actually grounded in like tradition, and what's just like somebody tweeted one day and it went off. um, so before I go any further, I thought I would read you guys the description for Pluto in Sagittarius that Chani Nicholas has on her app. Chani, oh, you're so fast. I love this. Thank you. um, so in the app, Chani says, quote, "You and your generation were born into a period of unprecedented exploration and global connection. The internet was at many a fingertip. Any questions could be answered without having to visit a library or wait for a book to come for the first time in history. Raised in a world transformed by a veritable flood of knowledge, you and your peers are part of changing how humanity processes, prioritizes, and shares that knowledge. If a credence is mainstream, well established, or commonly misquoted, then one thing's for sure, you're going to look into it. You're a natural skeptic, but only because you take your beliefs to heart. Looking for a resonant philosophical system or a way of life is very important to you, and you won't settle for a half-baked religiosity. Your high expectations push you to interrogate society's tacit moral agreements in order to create something that you can believe in." End quote. I come back to this delineation on the Chani app all of the time because I think it's so, so beautiful. And I wanted to share it with you guys, mainly because this is a free astrology conference, and this is part of the paid part of Chani's app. So I thought I would give it to folks that might not have the capacity to have a subscription to that app. But I did just want to say, on the topic of pop astrology, giant shout out to this app. For it's like, if you guys aren't familiar, Chani is an astrologer, obviously. Gosh, but it's an app like by astrologers, which it's not the first, but it is definitely one of the most influential ones out there right now. And the content they make is just beautiful and really, really great. So I wanted to plug that there. And her book, "You Were Born for This," is probably like the book that like solidified, oh, I want to do this for a long time. So back to the Zoomers. So as the ruler of our Pluto sign, our individual Jupiter placements drastically influence our perception of the collective experience. And I have Pluto in, it's not Pluto, obviously I have Pluto in Sagittarius. I have Jupiter in Aries, but I'm born like, I think it's 3 hours after Jupiter retrogrades back into Aries in 99, which always made me feel like I was drastically different than my peers when I was in class, or in school at least. And this really got me thinking about how like our Jupiter placements are really going to influence just like how we show up in the world, and like what we believe in, and what we like want to what's the word? No, it escaped my brain. So sorry, folks. But Zoomers, we've had access to this knowledge, but we haven't been given the critical skills to parse out fact from fiction. And let's face it, Jupiter can go too far. The volume of information that's out there is dizzying, it's distracting. But because we all have access to these platforms of communication, we are very quick to stand tall in our soapboxes and proudly broadcast our beliefs. And in astrology's case, everyone suddenly has a platform to talk about it. And so what's the result, right? The accessibility of astrology brought about by digital technology allowed it for it to enter popular discourse in a way that wasn't previously possible. Sure, newspaper horoscopes got, people talking in communal spaces, but having a constant discourse about astrology online for anybody at any time to participate in is wild, right? It's unheard of. And we really don't know what it's going to do to the future of astrology. And we can teach ourselves, we can teach others, all without meeting another astrologer in real life. Can I get like a little like emoji reaction for the amount of people that are in here right now that are self-taught, or like use the internet as like the main like intro to their astrology career? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of hands. This is really fun and also very affirming that I knew I wasn't alone, but okay, it's literally most of the people in here. Okay, I love this. Thank you. um, so yeah, this brings to like the very obvious part that like over the pandemic, there's been an uptick in Zoomer astrologers creating astrology content on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and it has been incredible. But it has also left a gap in credibility. It's really difficult to parse out what is true and grounded in research and what is just complete bullshit. Oh, I can't swear on my podcast, so I'm going to have to bleep that out. Whoops, it happens on a live radio. That's why. And I like my producers, so I don't want to get um, taken off the air. Anyways, more voices in the community means more disagreements, but this is just a fact of life. But also now astrologers are competing with these giant media outlets and platforms, having to sacrifice complexity for quick clicks. I'm sure lots of people on here use TikTok, and I'm sure lots of you are consistently frustrated by some of the hot takes that are happening over there. But it's the same with any platform, right? So many things have been said on Twitter, in astrology spaces that you've probably been like, like ABC Astrology, crickets. If there's a cricket sound, that'd be good. But oh my God. I don't know what that was, but it got a good spook out of me. Happy Halloween. Sorry if I just screamed in all of your ears, everyone.
Sorry, I was trying to go for the cricket sound and I hit the wrong button.
Hey, it's okay. There you go. I liked it. Well, that same Wired article that I was quoting before says that, quote, while the internet has enabled a whole new generation of folks to learn the vocabulary and basics of the field, it's also resulted in astrology becoming something that often gets boiled down to 280 characters, quips or reaction gifs, formats that naturally lack complexity and nuance. And this kind of like brings me to the end that makes me want to open the floor up for a little bit of discussion. You know, it's really, really cool that like platforms like TikTok and Twitter are bringing the language of astrology and the power that astrology has to a wide audience of people, specifically a wide audience of young people. But also, what does that do to like pop astrology as a whole and just like the wider umbrella of astrology? Um, and like to repeat my introductory questions, what does it mean for an entire Pluto generation to grow up online? And for us to have lived through a pandemic and feel like we have all of these things that we want to say and a platform to share it with? And what does it mean for everyone to grow up with access to these revolutionary astro technologies? We can draw charts, we can share memes, we can, you know, go on Discord and Twitter spaces, and all that jazz. And so then what does it do to the perception of astrology within pop culture and the future of astrology in general? So that is my ending question. And I mean, I'm sure I have many other thoughts, but I would love to A, see some memes that you guys have shared, or B, hear any thoughts that folks in the audience might have. So feel free to request speaker. I think that's what you do.
Yeah, so for anyone that's new to Spaces, tap the gray mic that says request and you can request to speak.
If someone doesn't choose to speak, I'm going to sing you a little song. Oh, perfect. You don't want to hear my little song. Hello. Is, is it lit? I'm definitely saying your name wrong.
I had a question about the naming for the 22 subgenerations because I don't see Aries on the first one.
Oh, yes. But if you look at the dates, you'll see that everyone would have their sun in Aries.
Ah, see?
Yeah. Good question. I thought someone was going to bring that up actually. And no shade to the way that I named the subgenerations. I quite honestly, smoked a little bit of weed and sat there and went, what can I, what can I name all these subgenerations? And if you have any
I
suggestions for
love
what
that
you
for
want your
you.
subgeneration to be named, thank you. Hello, HD.
Hello, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I just wanted to say that I appreciated this talk a lot because, a good part of this year I spent trying to create memes as kind of a way to practice my art, and I like putting my art out there. And yeah, I definitely encountered a lot of conflicting opinions on whether or not memes were okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very wide range from generalization as bad period to people feeling like they actually were understood by me taking a moment to draw a meme. And so I do feel like that kind of is a tribute to your point, and I wanted to share it because it was all over my comment section for the first half of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great point. And I'm glad you brought that up because it's this back and forth, right? Of like people resonate with it and see it and are so excited to like feel witnessed by these memes. And then other people are like, you're stereotyping, you're disgracing the name of astrology. And it's like, where's the balance, right? Um, which is why I'm so happy we're having this conversation.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's hard to find the balance, and it's hard to know, like, are you potentially quote unquote doing harm, like no matter how much effort you put into making sure that a meme isn't negatively generalizing. um no matter how much effort you put into that, someone can see it, not relate, and decide otherwise. And it's just kind of figuring out at what point do you have to take accountability for that, and at what point is it just someone's not relating, and that's that.
Yeah. Accountability. Ooh, what a good word for that. Because it's true. It's like the artist that's like is kind of accountable, but it's also up to like everyone's going to have a different interpretation of it, right? And it's like, are you accountable for everyone's opinions? I don't know if there's an answer to that.
Honest, I don't think there is an answer to it.
No. I do want to give a shout out to HD because they helped me with when I was making the logo to Astrologize. They gave me some advice and it was very helpful. Cam, I saw you up there as a speaker like a couple seconds ago. I don't know if you had thoughts. Um, it's okay if you don't. Okay, cool. Did people share any memes in the thread? Because I want to see memes. Oh, awesome. I'm going to accept your request here. Oh, I really do feel like a boomer with Twitter Spaces, but I think I'm getting it.
You are, you are. Don't worry. I'm just beating you to the punch.
Oh, no, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah,
Awesome.
no,
Hey.
yeah, first I have like a question, but I also want to say that was a beautiful talk. Um, I'm glad that
Thank
one of the
you.
first panels is something with some joy and some levity. But during the talk, you mentioned that, we're in an age where information is readily available and it's hard to tell what is real and what is not. I was wondering, do you think joking about astrology is like an impediment to finding the truth, or it makes it a little bit harder, or uh, maybe it's easy to tell when some things are a joke and when they're not? For asking for my own purposes, because I joke about this a lot on my own page, but at the same time, I don't want to disrespect any living cultures, especially there are entire countries that actually do use astrology. So I also don't want to offend them. But at the same time, uh, especially when I'm dealing with fatalistic things, sometimes I cope with the fatalistic things by joking. So I wondered what your thoughts were on that.
That is a great, great question. And yeah, it's difficult, right? Because they say laughter is the best medicine, but laughter at the expense of anybody else is not good whatsoever, like end point. Um, and yeah, it's difficult because, you don't want like astrology to seem like some like super serious, like, you know, I don't know, cookie cutter thing. But at the same time, you want to be able to joke about it without people thinking that it's just like a pseudoscience, like the pseudoscience argument is so, I don't know, it just makes me so angry. And people actually asked to speak while you were asking your question. So I wonder if some of the folks I just accepted as speakers have any thoughts on that.
What's up, y'all?
Hey.
I feel like I can talk a little bit about this because if y'all know me, y'all know I love a good meme. And the reason that I really got into memes is because I found that it was a lot easier to convey what I was trying to say, especially like a space like Twitter. I didn't have the time to like tweet long threads, or I didn't have the time to make YouTube videos like I really wanted to. I do have a few YouTube videos where I break down like certain houses or certain transits, but when I figured out that I could use something funny, I'm mercurial, right? And my 10th house ruler is in the 12th house. So sometimes what I have to say doesn't come out the way that I want it. So using a medium like memes, for example, that can be a really fun way to help people understand what's going on, whether it's what sign the moon is in currently, what's going on with the moon, what's going on with, just any transits in general. But I feel like also what you mentioned, just having accountability, making sure that things aren't being stereotyped in a way where it's just not helpful to the practice. That's also important. But I do strongly advocate for it because I feel like humor is a great way, especially, we're all Pluto, most of us here are Pluto and Sag, but humor is a great way to understand reality, to make fun of reality even. Kind of like the meme that I shared in the comments where it says fixed signs prepping for the eclipses. And it's literally just like this guy getting his ass beat because like a lot of fixed signs, people with fixed angles can relate to that right now and how that feels. So yeah, I feel like as long as you're being respectful, you're being mindful. And if someone asks, you can explain where the information came from or why you conveyed that transit in that specific way, then I think it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, I loved everything that you just said. Oh, I'm so glad that you spoke up to say that because yeah, humor is a great way to understand reality and also to like, I don't know, laugh off some of the harder parts of just like being alive right now. And yeah, memes are an incredible medium to just like have fun and, find a little bit of ease in the world of content creation. I love that. And I really love that meme that you shared. It gave me a good giggle. Thank you.
Yeah, and one last thing to add is that I think a lot of us, like, we have our own community here, which is great. So we understand the language of astrology, but when it comes to creating content that you want everyone to understand, there's just some things that people are not going to be interested in, like just the general population as it pertains to astrology. So yeah, so it can be difficult to figure out how to convey things that are easy, simplistic, but not basically like bastardizing the practice to where it's dumbed down, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like the balance between, giving it to everybody who's interested in it and also like keeping some fun jokes for just us.
Yeah, I agree on that. I think there's a fine line actually in between being responsible, which I believe another speaker was talking about, and actually bringing more people into the space and encouraging people to learn. I think you made a really good example about Mercury retrograde and how it seemingly is used by people to influence and garner a crowd to their channels, which I'm not a huge fan of. But I also found it very interesting that the previous speaker was talking about how most people in this room had Pluto and Sagittarius, and I guess I'm a bit of an outlier because I have Pluto in Libra, albeit the very last degree of Libra. But the way I see it is exactly that, like the responsibility that we have as astrologers to make sure that the information that we do convey, albeit in an entertaining manner, it is actually accurate. And actually might, because if people are using TikTok or Instagram as a reference point for what astrology is, then more often than not, I believe that they're getting a very skewed vision of what it is and what's going on at the moment and how that can affect them in their lives. And so we all have a responsibility in that regard. But it is very different in regards to, let's say, the back of a newspaper and Mystic Meg. That was a thing in UK newspapers. And I
Yeah, I
think,
was looking at those.
yeah, it's almost a mock. That is a mockery, but I think this is an entertaining way of engaging. And it also brings us back, I suppose, into Pluto in Sagittarius and what that means. Because Pluto breaks down barriers, is very transformative. And Sagittarius typically is about traveling and long distance and stuff. So what you could say is that effectively it is this medium is breaking down the distance between us all. We have this wonderful medium whereby we can connect. And it doesn't matter if I'm in England and you're in the other side of the pond. We have a means in which we can come together and we can discuss. And I love that. So, it's interesting how Pluto has, and all the outlying planets, to be honest, have such a huge, significant, a generational impact. And I very much enjoyed your breakdown of the different kind of subsets within each kind of generation. And I think that's a very interesting skew of research. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you so much. And I really love what you just said about breaking down the distance, because I think that that's something so special that we all have going for us right now. Yeah. And I want to get to everybody, so I'm going to shush and let you guys speak.
Hello. Thank you so very, very much for this lovely panel. It was very, very educational, very impressive. Thank you so much. I
Oh,
wanted
thank
to
you.
I wanted to touch on that. Yeah, I believe since astrology is so flexible and it can literally be applied to so many aspects of human culture and experience, that having that flexibility is integral to keeping it, in the culture. And sure, yes, at times it can be overly simplified, and everyone will absolutely have their opinions about that on which is what the line should be and the boundary. But I would say that that's a good thing, because if there's always a tension there, that always means that it's not going to become stagnant. And
Yeah.
and I just wanted to ask one more thing, since you like lovingly just made out that whole entire graphic with Pluto and Sag generation and the subgenerations. Do you like know any transit or any point that you can like see that would influence them, like to either make the memes pro astrology or something along those lines? Since clearly like Pluto and Sag generation, they all are the generations of memes, whether they want to have that moniker or not. Since as you mentioned, 2010, that's when things got really explosive.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been thinking a lot recently about um, like the transit of Uranus in Taurus right now being it's like with the folks with Uranus and Aquarius are we would have just we'll be finishing our Uranus transit. And I've witnessed a lot of people that have Uranus and Aquarius. They're either hardcore into astrology, hardcore like I want to say like atheists don't want to believe in anything, not to lump astrology as a religion, but also the other camp of they're like hardcore like religious, right? Um, and so I think that we have this like interesting polarization happening, while we also all just connect through memes. So I don't know if that's a clear answer, but now I'm curious and I'm definitely going to look into it. So thank you. I also love what you said about the flexibility being integral.
Just one last question, sorry, Jill. If someone was to refer to you as a pop astrologer, I'm just curious about kind of titles and terminology, because we've got vastly different fields within astrology, different house systems, and the resurgence of certain practices and house systems within within astrology. But this new emergence of pop astrology, as you put it, like, would you feel offended if you was referred to as a pop astrologer? Would you feel that that's a title that fits you well? I mean, how do you feel about that terminology?
Wow, I've actually never put a lot of thought into it. I feel like my first reaction would probably be like, oh, pop astrologer. But when I sit with it a little bit, um, I feel like there is such value in pop astrology because of how many people want to be consuming it, and it's not going to be going away anytime soon. So if like redefining what it means to be a pop astrologer and like grounding it in research and facts and stuff like that helps to like change the landscape of pop astrology, then sure, call me a pop astrologer. I'll sign me up.
That was a lovely space. It is 56, 4 minutes till the next, and I believe our next space has started. So thank you so much, Jill, for this presentation. Thank you all for attending. Enjoy the rest of KazimiCon.
Thank you all so much for being here. Oh, I'm so grateful for you all. And yeah, go listen to everyone else's talks. This has been so fun. Thank you.